Good morning, everybody. What is up, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold. Today's going to be a short little video, but I'm going to include this into my true crime recap for the week. But one of the cases that I have previously talked about on this channel, the case of Stacy Lyn Chahorski, they've finally solved it. So in my video that I put up last year after they identified her, I mentioned that they were looking into a man named Henry Wise, or Henry Frederick Wise, aka Hoss Wise. So Hoss Wise was a truck driver, which they assumed that the Redhead murder killer was a truck driver, and he was traveling from Western Carolina's trucking company, and he was going through Chattanooga all the way down to Birmingham into Nashville, and he also worked as a stunt driver. So around this time in 1988 is when he killed Stacy Lyn Chahorski, who laid as a Jane Doe until we identified her. So last year, with the help of AudioChuck and with Othram, they were able to identify her as Stacy Lyn Chahorski and not as a Jane Doe anymore, which kind of gave us more of an insight into the Redhead murder case, because we have figured out a bunch of these Jane Does from this case. Obviously, there is still more that have not been identified that I did go over in a previous video. I'll link, because I have an entire set of videos for the Redhead murders. I'll put it in a playlist and I will link it. That way you can watch all of them, because I go through all of these Jane Does. All of the ones that have been identified, I did a supplemental video on. There was one where I literally posted the video about the Jane Doe and she was identified that same day, which I thought was really bizarre. But I will put it all in a playlist down below in the description box. That way you can watch all of the videos associated with the Redhead murders. Like I mentioned in that video, I thought it was a truck driver. It's somebody that is very familiar with the roads. They know of areas where they can just kind of go off and do their thing and without being noticed, especially by the police. And it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, especially if you're an outsider looking in. Of course, there's a lot of things about the Redhead murders case that we probably don't know. There's probably a lot about Stacy Lyn Chahorski's death that we don't know, other than now that she has been identified. But, I mean, basically the world is our oyster when it comes to genetics and when it comes to figuring out exactly who did what. And I mean, last year was big. We found out that the rising Fawn Jane Doe was Stacy Lyn Chahorski, and it took us years to find out who she was. Years. It's insane how long a John or Jane Doe can go unidentified for. And then because of the advancement in genetics and science, we are now able to figure out who they are. So Stacy Lyn Chahorski went 33 years without knowing, us knowing who she is. And it is mind-boggling and baffling at the same time that we're able to do it, but because of how long it took, it's kind of it's one of those things man. But they were able to figure out that it was indeed Henry Wise because of genetics. So the downfall about this case is that he will not be brought to justice because he unfortunately died back in 1999. So he died during a car accident. Well, he burned to death as a result of a car accident at Myrtle Beach Speedway in South Carolina. And when he was arrested prior to this is before they mandated DNA testing for felons or for felony arrests. So he went completely undetected for the longest time. So 99 up until 2022. So 23 years. He went 23 years without being connected to the case. And it wouldn't be until that team effort between AudioChuck and Othram, and with the Dade County Sheriff's Office and the Georgia Bureau of investigations office without their cohorts of working together and figuring out that this indeed was the man that killed her, I think it would still remain unsolved right now. But I do have hopes that they will try and figure out if he indeed is the Redhead murderer. But I'm not sure, because there's already been one other victim of the Redhead murders that has a completely separate killer. And now we've identified this killer. Maybe it's just a simple fact of, hey, we're finding these victims in different places. But at the same time, it could be because and if this is connected to the I-70 killer, which I did a video on that too, where again, it was a truck driver, or I think it's a truck driver because these victims are found at truck stops. And I mean, we've learned from the Happy Face killer, so Keith Hunter Jesperson, we learned from him, it was easy for him to take people while he was on the road because not everybody's going to remember them, especially if they're sex workers or just transients or simply hitchhiking, which a lot of these victims seem to be. They're simply hitchhiking, transients. They're just out for a walk. If I didn't say sex workers again, like in that category, nobody tends to look for them, so they're easy prey. And we learned that from Keith Hunter Jesperson. A lot of these victims, some of their families didn't report them missing because it just didn't seem that they were missing. They were known to just like kind of peruse on their own and things like that. There's different things with these cases where you have to kind of put that in, but at the same time you kind of have to be like, hey, this is a weird anomaly where it doesn't fit with the rest of them. And the biggest thing that of course investigators need to find is that one anomaly that can separate a victim from the rest, or the one anomaly in all the cases where it connects all of them together. So sorry to be long-winded, but this stuff intrigues me. So that, my friends, we now have a solved murder case of Stacy Lyn Chahorski at the hands of Henry Frederick Wise. I hope that there's going to be more, or like a news conference maybe that will come out about this, and maybe their hopes of like the future workings of the Redhead murder case. But if there's not, that's totally fine. I can continue to peruse, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.